I would like to introduce our legislators this morning. First, senators. Senator Joe Bolcom, District 43.
Morning.
Kevin Kinney, District 39. Zach Walls, District 37. And our representatives, Bobby Kaufman, District 73. David Jacoby, District 74. Amy Nielsen, District 77. Vicki Lensing, District 85, and Mary Masher, District 86. We will start the forum with 5-minute summaries from each of our legislators on recent legislative issues and matters that are of interest to them individually. First, starting with Senator Joe Bolcom.
Good morning. Thank you, Hazel. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out on such a cool January morning. It's good to be here. So we're in our second week. This last week was kind of filled with snow days over at the State House. Folks not necessarily get there either to come see us for activities, and the chambers were a little light too. The next week, more crazy weather, so we may have kind of another slow week ahead. The first week of the session, we had the governor give a condition of the state message, followed by the Chief Justice Katie talking about the Supreme Court and the courts, and then Major General Orr gave a condition of the National Guard. So we the first week's a lot of speeches, and then we do a little organizational work. The first meetings of the committees that went down. One of the things in the Senate that happened over the last 2 weeks is when we meet initially, we establish rules for how the committees are going to operate. And we were pretty disappointed that Senate Republicans decided to eliminate the requirement for a 24-hour notification for subcommittees. Subcommittees are where a bill begins the process of moving forward. It's the only time that the public gets to speak. And for more than the last decade under Democrats, we said we'll publish in writing 24 hours ahead of the time when the public and the lobby can come talk to us. And so we were kind of disappointed to see, at least on the Senate side, kind of pushing people away from being involved in the process. We were not able to, in most of the committees, knock that particular change down, and also not making meetings open to the public. So that was kind of disappointing. Some good news of the first week, we were really pretty happy with the governor's initial proposals on funding for K-12. She's proposed nearly $90 million new dollars, about 2.3% increase on higher ed, fully funding the Board of Regents request at $18 million, $4.6 million in new community college money, and then the governor also expressed support for restoring felon voting rights. And so there was a lot of, on our side, we thought the governor kind of drew to the middle compared to where we've been. It's a good sign when Republicans' colleagues are grousing about the governor sounding like a Democrat. So that was all good. Lots to work on this session. One of the issues I've been involved with, I hope to work with Representative Kaufman on, is fixing our kind of failing medical cannabis program, a program trying to help chronically sick folks get access to medicine that might be of some assistance. I know he's going to be working on that issue this session. I hope to work with him on that. I'll end there, pass my time on.
Senator Kinney.
Hi, thank you. Such a lovely morning to come out. This is my beginning of my second term, and I'm ranking member of Ag. I'm a ranking member of Judiciary. I'm on the Ethics, and then I have a new committee in Transportation this year. Some of the things that I've been working on for the last 3 years is the hemp legislation. I get to go home this afternoon and read our draft, and hopefully that'll be coming out next week. And to me, it's an economic engine here for the state of Iowa. It gives farmers an alternative crop that they can grow, but also in that it's a product that cost a lot to transport, and so the companies from both the East Coast and West Coast that I've been speaking with and working with want to come here and do processing. So I think we can have some growth in our rural communities in which we need. Next thing is if we can get enough workers to work in those places, but hopefully the jobs will pay enough that we'll be able to get them to come. Another thing that on the judiciary this year, I'm introducing and working on a bill raising the penalty for theft against older Iowans and/or disabled Iowans, making that one of the things within the theft section that if you're frauding an older Iowan, they'll be able to charge them with theft. There's a lot of bills floating. I think I've assigned 42 bills in the judiciary to our committee already, and it's one of those things that I'm told that there's probably going to be a few hundred bills come through judiciary, and it's about all you're doing is reading. When those bills come in, I try to read all those bills, and it's like, man, it's hard to keep up. So I look forward to hearing your questions and concerns.
Thank you. Senator Walz.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be with you all this morning. My girlfriend is Australian, and she speaks Celsius, and I think that we are at the point where Fahrenheit and Celsius are actually about to converge, is how cold it is outside. So I'm really impressed by the crowd that we've got this morning, and really glad to have all of you with us. I'm State Senator Zach Walz. I'm succeeding Senator Bob Dvorsky, and I just want to start by saying, one of the things that's become very clear to me in the first 2 weeks of session is how much love and affection there is for Senator Bob out in Des Moines, and he leaves very big shoes to fill. And I'm working very hard to do my best to get up to speed. There's a very steep learning curve for those of us who are freshmen. We started with a kind of a new member orientation a few weeks ago, and our caucuses have been doing a very good job of helping us kind of understand the resources that are there and get up to speed. And so for those of you who have reached out, please continue to do so. It may take just a little bit to get back to you, but we're doing our very best to stay on top of email and all of that. I have the privilege of serving on some really terrific committees. I'm going to be on Ways and Means and Appropriations, which are taxes and spending, with Senator Bolcom. Senator Kinney is my ranking member on the Agriculture Committee, which I'm very excited to be a part of. And then I'm also on the Education Committee, which is relevant today and part of why I'm wearing my America's Need Teachers t-shirt. And then I also have the privilege of being the ranking member on the Education Budget Subcommittee, which funds our higher education and basically everything that is not the K-12 standing appropriation. So I'm really lucky to have some great opportunities to learn and to hopefully be a part of getting some laws passed. As I'm sure you all know, Democrats are still in the minority this session, and in the Senate it's about 1832, so it's a pretty deep minority. And as a result of that, if you want to get anything done, you have to be able to work across the aisle. So I've been really focused on building relationships both within my own caucus and within the Republican caucus, to try and figure out where the areas where we do have some agreement. Senator Bolcom mentioned, I think a lot of us were fairly pleased with the condition of the state address from Governor Reynolds, as well as her proposed budget, and our hope is that our Republican colleagues will see that as the place where they want to go. The full funding of the Board of Regents budget request is something that I was excited about. Obviously, that 2.3% number, I would like to see it closer to 4%, but $90 million of new money is still $90 million. So I think there's still going to be a lot of things where we're going to do our best. We're going to fight for our values, our priorities where we can, and then when there are areas where we can compromise, we'll plan to do that. I do have some concerns, especially as Senator Bolcom mentioned, the subcommittee rules. My own personal story really kind of starts with the ability to speak publicly about the issues facing me and my family, and so I'm very concerned about the possibility that the ability of the public to weigh in could be limited. Something that I'm watching very, very closely, and that I hope you will speak up if that's something that concerns you when it comes to people being able to offer public comment. And, I'll leave it there, pass it off to Representative Coffin, but really looking forward to the questions today, and thanks for being here.
Well, good morning, everyone. Bobby Coffin, House District 73. Even though I'm outnumbered here, it's always a pleasure to be here. I come here because, A, I think it's important, and B, if I'm not here, Senator Bolcom actually misses me. I had an interesting morning this morning. It's so cold that I actually have two goats. There was an accident about 5 months ago. The boy goat got in, and needless to say, they're bagging down and going to have babies soon. And I couldn't go to sleep last night knowing that there was possibly going to be babies born in this weather because they'd obviously die. So I have an older, unfinished farm basement, but it's heated. I now have two goats running around in my basement, and but at least I can sleep at night knowing that they're not going to die. It's true. It's a true story.
Is that allowed? Your time has got to be up.
I try to humanize myself. Anyway, some of my priorities this year that I listed in my first newsletter, funding to our EMS officials. There are too many times where our ambulance services are having to have pancake breakfast just to fully fund their budget. Focusing on funding the mental health bill that we passed last year, but also expanding it to children's mental health. On the education side, I was happy to see the governor do 2.3%. I think that's reasonable. I will again oppose all forms of vouchers, charters, whatever you want to call it, whatever name it's got. I don't think that's going to have any merit or traction, but if it does, I will certainly do my part to stop it, as well as passing the SAVE extension bill. There is no daylight between my views and Senator Bolkin's views on cannabis. I think anything he says on that issue, I tend to agree with him on, and I'm hoping to fix a severely flawed cannabis program. And then finally, the issue is why I led off with the goat story. The issue nearest and dearest to my heart is facing Iowa's animal cruelty crisis on two fronts. I think the penalties need to be higher. I think that repeat felons should not have the right to, again, someone who's harmed a pet should not have the ability to do it again. And then also looking at some of our puppy mill laws to be able to make it so that animals aren't living in obscene conditions is going to be one of my top personal priorities this session. Happy to be here and answer any of your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. And Bobby, you know, Democrats can help you with the science of reproduction. It is science-based, so we'll go with that. Hey, many times people ask us at the Capitol, does anyone come to our forums? And I say, heck yes, especially when we're talking about education. So if I may, I want a quick picture to prove it. Everybody smile and say education. Education. Excellent. My name's Dave Jacoby, and I serve House District 74. I'm the ranking member on Ways and Means, serve on Commerce, Natural Resources, and Economic Growth. There's a number of things in the tax issues that we'll be facing this year. The one thing I want to let everyone know is that this coming summer, are the tax review committees. So in my viewpoint, we shouldn't do anything major on tax reform until we have a full vetting of the tax review committee on tax credits and tax expenditures. I will say one thing I've worked on early in the first 2 weeks is the mental health crisis that we have in Iowa. And interesting enough, the three people in the lobby working on this, Peggy, Lon, and Renee, have been deeply involved with this for a number of years. And I was sitting with them and I said, what's the biggest barrier we have? And the biggest barrier they said we have right now is the Farm Bureau. And I said, how is that? And interesting enough, Lon is a former Republican staff person for about a decade. Renee is a former Republican legislator from Cedar Rapids. And Peggy's been involved with NAMI for years. That's one thing we have to work on is how can we get Farm Bureau to be our partners in mental health reform and not one of our barriers. And that, in fact, Zach and I ran into the new executive director, Joe Johnston, at one of the events we had, and we began that discussion, and we're going to sit down one-on-one with him to see what we can do to remove those barriers for both children's and adults' mental health. Darn glad you're here. It's awful cold, but the forum, our youngest daughter is moving back to school today, and by having the forum, that means my wife had to take her. So I'm nice and warm, and she's loading stuff into the apartment, but thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Representative Nielsen.
Thank you. I'm Amy Nielsen, House District 77, which is Western and Southern Johnson County. That's about the most I've ever heard Dave speak. Usually it's just Jacoby Coralville. So you all are in for a treat today. I am so excited to not be the newest member of the Johnson County delegation anymore. Welcome, Senator Walz. The hazing does not end after the first year. I'm really excited this year to have the opportunity to serve not only on local government and state government again, but also Ways and Means with Representative Jacoby, and then be ranking member on the Commerce Committee. I think there's an awful lot of new things that I can learn, and I'm really excited to learn. And other than that, it's been kind of quiet on my end. I didn't have 42 bills like Senator Kinney, and quite frankly, I'm happy about that. So I don't have a lot to report just yet, but I'm glad to be here. I'm really thankful that you all braved the cold to come out, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And Representative Lansing.
Thank you. And good morning to everyone. It's like Representative Jacoby said, it's always a pleasure to come here and see a full room, and so I'm glad you braved the cold to join us this morning. My committees this year haven't changed. I serve on state government, local government, environmental protection, and oversight. Oversight, we have no investigations this year. I don't know how that happened. I've been on oversight since I was first elected 19 years ago, and there's always some crisis, something we need to investigate, and there's nothing this year. So I don't know if it's the cold weather, I don't know what's going on, but it's kind of nice not to have something facing us that we need to investigate. State government is going to be a very busy committee. Representative Kaufman is the chair. Representative Masher is the ranking member. So I think between them, I thought they would cover more of the issues facing us, so I'm just going to highlight a couple. Gaming issues come before this committee, and certainly online wagering, sports betting, is an issue that we will be dealing with. Any changes to alcohol laws will come in front of this committee, and also election laws, and I see our auditor here. We are also facing in the House this week, I believe we'll see, may even debate it on the floor. There was a House election in House District 55, which is up near Decorah, Winnesheek County, where 29 ballots were not counted. And because of that, it's how we interpret the law, how we enforce the law. That's before a committee. And I think we will even then, in interpreting the law or changing the law, I think the House will become more actively involved in this. So I think it's something, although maybe it's not getting much coverage here, it's something we should be aware of because our vote is our voice. And I think we need to pay attention to how it wasn't followed in another district. So I would encourage you to keep your eyes open for that. We also have, in environmental protection, the bottle bill will be probably the only bill we do, but I think a bill will come forward, and it's looking at changing the penny to maybe 2 or 3 cents, and part of that is because redemption centers are having problems. I know our distributors are not happy with that. I'm sure Hy-Vee is not happy with that, but I think when I hear from the public, which I've heard for a long time, for many years, about making some changes, it's about time. I don't know that we're going to change any of the containers that will be accepted, but as my environmental chair said, one step at a time, and just to change the penny will be huge. So I would say if you're interested in that, keep following that. I think there are a lot of issues that may be percolating out there we haven't seen yet. I'm anxious to, none of the committees have assigned bills that I serve on yet, so I'm assuming next week is when they will start dropping on us. I look forward to the work this session. I'm also very pleased to work with both Representative Kaufman and Masher on state government. I think that will be the heavy lift committee for me this year, and I, again, appreciate all of your interest and being here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Masher.
Thank you. I just want to thank the League and give them a shout out for sponsoring these forums and allowing us to share what's going on in the State House with you, but also our Education Committee and community for their support for education and their advocacy. We hear from you all the time, and we appreciate that, and we don't want you to stop. So please continue to contact us and let us know when there are issues that obviously pertain to our education education community. I just wanted to mention that I'm on state government ranking member Ed Approps, full ed education standing, and then full appropriations in the House, and then transportation infrastructure are the subcommittees that I'm on. Just wanted to let you know that you are always welcome to come to Des Moines. We are always willing and able to get you into our committee meetings, take you around with us, introduce you to folks, and make sure that you talk to the people you need to talk to in terms of issues that pertain to Iowa City and our area in Johnson County. So please always feel that you're welcome there and that you're free to come. Vicki mentioned a little bit about the count the votes. I handed out to you, and it's on the back table right behind Megan and Nick, the summary, and it's the executive, basically the minority report and the majority report. The minority report from the Democrats is on the front, and the majority report from the Republicans is on the back. We will be debating this very soon, and it's a matter of whether votes should be or not counted in terms of this last election. And whatever happens in terms of the outcome, there's always appeals that can be taken on through the court system, but also it's that fundamental right for people to be able to vote. And to me, that is extremely important and something we should all be supporting in terms of everybody's vote counting, especially if they followed all the rules. And in this case, there are 29 voters in that district, 55, that did follow all the rules, and their votes are being denied. And I think, again, we need to address that. And whatever happens, we need to correct it so it never happens again. And so Representative Kaufman will have those bills in state government, and I'm hoping that we can work together in a bipartisan fashion so that that can be corrected, whatever happens. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and I'm surprised Representative Kaufman didn't, is he had vowed that we will not make any changes to IPERS this year and next year as well. And to me, that's extremely important because we've received a lot of emails from folks all across the state who have been concerned about their IPERS and whether that system will change for new employees or existing employees who are involved in it. And he vowed that there would be no changes in the next 2 years. Part of the concern comes about because we were told collective bargaining wouldn't be changed dramatically either, and it was just going to be tweaked, and in essence, it was gutted. And I think everybody understands that. So sometimes there is a trust issue that goes on within the legislature, and when things like that happen, it's more difficult to trust. And so that's, I think, where some of that is coming from. Glad voting rights for felons is on your list as a priority in terms of the league. The governor has vowed that we will get something done constitutionally, but she could change it tomorrow by an executive order that allows felons to vote today. And so I think, again, if you're sincere about that, then do it now. We can still go through the constitutional process to amend the Constitution for the future, but let's get it done. It's important. We know that. It means a lot to 69,000 folks who have felony records in this state that have been denied that right to vote. Children's mental health system, I was on the committee that the governor had appointed for the interim, and again, that is something that I think will come through this year. We need a system that works for our kids, and we want our schools to be involved in the healthcare community. We have a shortage of providers. We know that needs to be addressed as well, and we have some very concrete ways to go about that. We also need to fix the adult system. There are some enormous problems within that system that need to be fixed this year, and I'm hoping that we can accomplish that. Thank you all for being here this very cold morning. I feel the warmth in the room.
And thank you all for your updates on legislative issues. Before we go to the questions, I have two things. One, there are a couple of empty chairs, so those folks in the back, don't hesitate to come up. And I know I put my coat on a chair over there. Just put it on the floor. It's already well dirtied enough. come up and go to the chairs. The other thing is we have some students here this morning, and I'd like to introduce them. Please welcome 7th grade students in Global Studies at North Central Junior High School. Okay, well,
I'm just going to introduce them. My name's Elisa. I get to teach these girls. We have an after-school club, a service club, and there's 4 different entities. These girls represent LGBTQ interests, and they have been so excited to meet with you guys. And we've missed all of our meetings this week because of snow days, so they have created all these questions for you on their own. Should we come up? We should start with Alex.
no, excuse me. The moderator steps here. No, we will tell you when.
Oh.
There's a little section here that needs to happen before the students come up.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were calling them up. Okay.
No, just introducing them. But thank you so much, and again, welcome, and welcome to all the students. At this time, we will begin the questions, starting with one from the league and then one from each of the co-sponsors, and then followed by questions from members of the audience. In order to maximize the number of questions, you will be timed. Today's timekeeper is Eleanor Levin.
Yay, Eleanor.
You have 1 minute to state your question. After 1 minute, if you have not stated your question, I will prompt you to do so. So please be respectful of everyone's time. As you come forward, please speak directly into the microphone, introduce yourself, and if you are representing an organization, tell us which one. You may direct your questions to any or all of the legislators. If you have a second question, please wait till others have had a chance to ask theirs. Legislators each have 2 minutes to respond. Out of respect for all present, please do not interrupt speakers. So let me begin with the league's question. Massive cuts are proposed to the area education agencies, the AEAs. Do you support the cuts, and what impact do you think they will have on our school systems? Senator Bolcom.
I don't support the cuts. I think my sense is the cuts we're taking money from the AAs to fund allowable growth or some other enterprise that they want. But the AEAs provide important services to our local schools, and we need them to be strong as well as we need our local schools to be strong. So I'm not sure what we're going to do about it. The AEAs have kind of been on rough times over the last few years. I don't know why exactly we've turned on them, or the other side has turned on them, but it's a challenge for them. And Representative Masher mentioned the children's mental health issue. You know, we turn to the AEAs for support, our districts do, for support staff to help with that problem. And when we cut them, we don't do a very good job supporting our kids.
Senator Kinney?
I do not support the cuts to the AAs. The AAs have had multiple cuts over the last few years since I've been in Des Moines. The AEAs were a very important part of my board learning when I was on the Clear Creek and Amana School Board. They did our professional development, a lot of the training. They're there for the students with a lot of the special needs and so forth that the schools cannot afford to do on their own, so they collaboratively do this, which encompasses many of the school districts. So I just don't feel that cutting them is the right way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I also oppose the cuts to our AEAs. I have to confess, I did not fully understand or appreciate the role that AEAs play in our state education system. Some of you may also, I'm sure most of you know what they do, but for those of you who might be wondering, AEAs play a really vital role supporting our school districts, large and small, when it comes to some of the things that are not a core competency for them. I believe that there have been a proposed proposed $7.5 million cut from AEAs this year, and the governor proposed doubling that up to $15 million in cuts this year, which I think is really unfortunate given the simultaneous spending that the governor has proposed, $3 million new dollars for children's mental health, training teachers how to recognize mental health challenges that may be taking place in the classroom. And so this is a situation where it feels a little bit kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face, because we all agree that children's mental health is a big issue. We know that one of the most important places to address that is in our schools. And this is not just a concern in Iowa City. When I was visiting Clarence out in Cedar County a couple of months ago, I was speaking with the superintendent for the North Cedar County Consolidated School District up there, and he was telling me that if they could, they would bring on 2 more faculty members to help them deal with mental health challenges that they're seeing in the classroom. And so I think that the AEA cuts are going to make that harder to do, not easier.
Okay.
My committee assignments are almost exclusive to policy. I haven't sat on a budget committee in years, so I oftentimes hear about appropriations after everybody else and know about policy before. I know that that's just one proposal, the governor's. The House hasn't even begun to discuss our budgetary processes, so when I have more information on that, I'll let you know. But I can say that I think that as we're looking for a mental health funding mechanism, appreciating the AEA's roles in that could be a way to funnel some of that money to them to make them a little bit more whole.
Representative Jacoby.
So this is a question, we're going down the whole line, just.
Yes,
Because
yeah,
I think we all,
pass or go.
I strongly support the AAs. I guess, interesting enough, for years, we demanded that the AEAs provide seamless service. And now everyone's pissed, everyone's mad that they offer seamless service because they don't know for sure if a person happens to be paid by the school district or through the AEA. What it means to me is the AEA is providing an exemplary service because they are seamless and helping students and families through the whole system become for successful outcomes. I think a lot of the anger toward AEAs is frankly based on salary structures, especially for the AEA directors. And I'm not going to apologize that people are making enough money to support their families.
Thank you. And Representative Nielsen, would you care to address it?
Yeah, just real quick, we'll say I would oppose cuts to the AEAs. And I think you will notice that we tend to play a little bit of a shell game with our education funding, taking a little bit from here to put here so that it looks like more new money is going into education when in fact it's just moving things around. And I think this is another one of those examples.
I don't support the cuts to AEAs either, and I think for many families, they may not even be aware of all the things that an AEA does until their child is in need of some service that the AEAs provide. So I think we need to realize that they're there, they support the school, the teacher, the classroom, the student, and the parents. And that's filling pretty big shoes. And I think especially for parents, sometimes the challenges that our child is facing, we don't know where to turn, and the AEAs are there to help us out. So I think cutting them is not only wrong, but I think it's so hard because it affects so many levels from the school and the classroom on down to the individual student and their families. So I would encourage all of you as an educational entity to please, make sure you track this and keep on it and also weigh in to all of us on where you stand on the issue.
Thank you.
So I vehemently oppose the cuts. Those of us, how many are educators in the room, K-12? I knew there were a number of you here today, and obviously you understand the importance of the AEA. The question from the league was, what do the cuts mean? It's services to students. That's what gets cut, and that's who's hurt by the lack of the funding. So as a former teacher, I know they provide speech and hearing screenings, which help us identify kids early on who are having difficulty and prevent them from learning if we don't have those things available. So it cuts back on those services. Behavioral specialist, when we have children who are acting out in classrooms, kids who have some very difficult home environments, those behavioral specialists are available and come in to assist the teacher in helping with those children. We'll have lack of support for that. Professional development. Our AEAs provide a great deal of the professional development that our teachers utilize on an annual basis to be able to get their CEUs and to be able to keep up with best practices in the classroom. That's critical. Those are important services. Technology, AV, media, all of those, again, are provided through our AEAs. Psychologists, social workers. You know, you look at all of the services that come from those entities and you understand why they're a valuable, critical, important part of every child learning. So it's not just our special ed students. A lot of that funding comes from the federal level, and that's protected. It's all of those other services that are a part of this that, again, are impacted. Our ELL kids benefit from those services as well. So I look at those cuts, and we talk about dumb cuts. That's a dumb cut because it really and truly affects the kids in the classroom, the parents, the teachers, and those people that are providing those services. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, we will entertain questions from our four co-sponsors. So Iowa City Community School District representative here.
Hi, JP Clausen, Iowa City School Community District School Board. As well, I work on the inpatient child and adolescent psych unit at the hospital. And so firsthand see kids, not just from this area, but all over the state. And it's a crisis. Yeah, the children's mental health in this state is woefully inadequate. And it's our schools that get the brunt of it. And so you mentioned the AEAs play a key role in that, right? Some school districts out in the state aren't going to afford a psychologist or a social worker, and so AEAs can kind of cover multiple school districts. But I'd wonder what we are looking at for school-based mental health services, because that's where we really need it, close to the classroom. That's what's going to support our teachers in the classroom to help those kids who are at the tip of our triangle and suffering the most. So what's out there for children's mental health in general, and then school-based mental health services?
Thank you.
Thanks.
So JP, I'll start in. When we had the discussion about the children's mental health system this summer, we had professionals in the medical community, education specialists, and folks from classroom teachers to parents, and just a variety of folks. We did hearings throughout the state through the AEAs to be able to get feedback from individuals in terms of what do they want this system to look like. And the things that we identified were, we want to have core services identified. What are each of the counties and what the areas, because we have mental health regions right now. We want to continue within those regions providing the children's mental health system, but we want to make sure that the core services are the same throughout the state so that there's some equity there. We talked about the governance structure. And what will that look like? And then, of course, the big issue is money. And where is the money going to come from? We decided that we would not put that back on property taxpayers with the levy rate at the county, that we would have that come from the state. And again, to provide that equity and not to get into the have and the have-not counties and to have, again, a divided system. So it was important that we, again, provide the funding and then, therefore, provide more equity across the state for the services that are needed. The school folks that were at the table talked about what is existing within the schools now, and again, that's really piecemeal across the state. Some of our counties are already funding children programs, but again, there's inconsistency. So we're looking at ways to change that and to make sure that all kids have access to that. Our schools are one of the best places to do it because the kids are right there. So providing providing those services in the schools, providing the additional money needed to make sure that they get that help. And again, we can contract, the school districts can contract with outside agencies to bring people in or to have their own counselors and folks that are within the system providing that. But those are so critical. We have a lack of beds throughout the state, and then I talked before about the lack of providers. So we've also identified what we can do to increase the number of providers in the state for all children so that kids have access to those services as close to home as possible.
Thank you.
So thanks for the question.
Yeah, other responders? Okay. Our second co-sponsor is the Iowa City Education Association.
Hi, good morning, and thank you all for being here, to everyone on a pretty chilly morning. And, I'm a government teacher, so this is how democracy works. That's what it looks like. I love it. I'm Brady Shutt. I'm the president of the Iowa City Education Association. I'd like to thank Robin Fields and Monique Kottman, who are on our executive board. They're here. They really organized, things with the bagels and the coffee and the behind-the-scenes work, and to the League for hosting these forums. It's fantastic. A special good morning to Senator Walz. You're a great inspiration to students and to teachers in our district. I'm really proud of you and appreciate all the service you've done prior to this and that you continue to do. So thank you very much. Our legislative priorities for ICEA were the extension of SAVE, 4% SSA, the protection of IPERS, no vouchers, and the restoration of collective bargaining rights found under Chapter 20. IPERS, it's not a lie to say that retirement security is a top priority for our members. So Representative Kaufman, I thank you very much for it was a very public show of support. It's recognized and very much appreciated. Thank you. And I hope your goats are okay. Iowa needs teachers. I'm going to piggyback off of Zach's t-shirt. We do. We need the best and the brightest, and funding matters and policies matter. Mary's right that there is a trust issue, and it's something we all need to work on. Participation in events like this is a very good first step, so we appreciate you all being here. I guess something we talk about a lot is how we retain the best and the brightest teachers and young people for our state, and I would like to ask you what role you see the legislature playing in that, or you individually as legislators. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. And first of all, thank you, Mr. Shutt, for that. Mr. Shutt was my AP government teacher in high school, so he clearly did okay. So this came up at our
What'd you get for a grade?
Dave.
He flew through, man. He was way up there.
It was an exciting time, actually, because it was 2007, 2008, so we had a little caucus going on at that time. But anyway, This question came up at our forum earlier this morning with the Chamber of Commerce. Brain drain. How do we keep people here? And I'll share some of the key things that I think, as somebody who is young, who is very happy to be building a future in Iowa, and who managed to convince my girlfriend of 4.5 years to abandon New York City to move to Coralville. I think there are kind of 5 key things that I would say are most important. First one, obviously, jobs, good, high-paying employment. We're at 2.4% in the state, so there are things that we can continue to do there, but I think we're okay on jobs. Housing is a really big one. Affordable housing is an issue that touches both urban and rural areas. Our cultural amenities, so the University of Iowa is huge in that regard, its ability to bring those in. I would say childcare is another really important one, especially for young parents. Childcare is very expensive, and finding accessible childcare is really important. Healthcare is another big one. We all know that there are some problems that continue to exist in our healthcare system, both here in the state and across the country. But education is, I would say, probably the single most important one. If you're talking about bringing people back to Iowa, education has been what has made Iowa for so long, and that's something that I think is really important. Part of it is definitely money. Part of it is respect for teachers, and part of it is making sure that we have strong support for our schools. So it's a multifaceted thing, but I do think that education has to play a really, really key role. And teacher shortages are part of bringing teachers here, right? The AEAs I met with at Grant Wood earlier this month, they mentioned over the next 5 to 10 years, we're looking at a very significant teacher shortage. And so I'd ask our educators, what are things that we can do to continue to attract teachers to our state?
Thank you. And the next question will come from the American Association of University Professors.
Before he gets up, I just like a couple points on this. We had a really good discussion about this morning, and yesterday we all met with our area superintendents and members of the public and talked about this issue. And we're encouraged by the community college superintendent to talk up teachers, right? To say nice things about teachers, because there's this feeling that teachers are kind of under attack over the last few years, and it's played out in Iowa around the collective bargaining agreement, and certainly. As we look forward and see a shortage really here now on teachers, it is important that we have good pay and that teachers and their families have good health benefits and that there's some retirement security there too. But I think what's underappreciated in these agreements, where you have large employers like the Iowa City Community School District, that these agreements are actually a way to organize the workplace. And what we have now with the new change to the collective bargaining agreement is that the school board's prohibited from talking to their employees about things like health care and things that go on in the classroom and schedules and time off, and they're literally prohibited from doing that. And I can't imagine a workplace where the employer, the boss can't sit down with the employees and say, here's how we're going to organize and be productive and do stuff. So if we could fix that, if we could fix the opportunity at least to make permissive the ability for the school board to have talk to the teachers and the workforce in these schools, that would go a distance, I think, in making the people in our classrooms feel like they had a voice with what's going on in their workplace.
And just to add to that, we know that other states are recruiting Iowa teachers. They are taking them from us and there are good quality jobs, and there are Iowans. And they're leaving the state to go to Minnesota, to go to Illinois, to go to other states where collective bargaining is protected. And so if you look at how do we attract and retain teachers, restoring our collective bargaining law would be one of the first things I would do, because that is hurting us as a state. And it's unfortunate that the people in the majority right now are not seeing why there's an exodus. There's a cause and effect. And what they did has sent a chill through the teaching profession. We know, we've had parents tell us, teachers, I've told my kid, don't teach here in Iowa. Your rights are not going to be protected. And so don't bother staying here, go elsewhere where they respect and show you that they are going to respect those rights and protect them.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's go back. And American Association of University Professors.
Words, Bob Dvorsky. It's just amazing to be sitting here or standing here and not see him there. And I would like to begin by thanking all of you for your support for higher education and also community college education, which I think is just as important. And also to thank Bob. I'm sure he's here in spirit. Maybe he's watching on TV. But as you know, the University of Iowa is the largest employer in Johnson County. Many people don't know it's also the largest employer in Cedar County. So I would just like to thank you for your work. I'll ask my question first, and then I'll explain to you why I'm asking it. I would like to ask you, even though the AAUP represents the interest of tenured and tenure-track faculty mostly, and I very much appreciate Senator Wall's comments in the DI, unless he was misquoted, which sometimes happens, but his recognition of the importance of tenure for quality of teaching. But the majority of undergraduate teaching is now done by non-tenured and non-tenured track faculty at the university. 54% of the credit hours are being done. And they are almost entirely unrepresented. 2 years ago, they got organized into a voluntary organization, not a union, called Faculty Forward. And my question is, are you willing to intervene with President Harold to express your concern about the way he's treating the non-tenured and contingent faculty at the university? First, he said, well, I will not talk to them. Then he agreed to talk to representatives of this group, Faculty Forward, but only under the conditions that they meet in a conference room in the University of Iowa Police Department, and each of them be searched for weapons first, and then ushered in individually under a police guard. I mean, I have never heard of such a disrespectful treatment of teaching faculty. Can you imagine if the president of Muscatine Community College said, "Oh, I'll talk to the faculty, but only if under armed guard," or if the principal of Liberty High School said, "Oh, I'll talk to faculty, but only if they're conducting a TSA child search before." It's just unthinkable. It is. And then after this meeting, which was a year ago last May, President Harold issued a statement saying that no one can talk to the contingent faculty representatives, not the dean of the College of Liberal Arts, not the provost. These are highly dedicated teachers who do a majority of the teaching, and I hope that if you get a chance to talk to President Harold, you will express your concern that he should treat these teachers with some respect.
Thank you for your question.
Yes, if and when we can get a meeting with him, we'd be happy to bring this issue to his attention. It's concerning.
So I have the privilege of serving on the Education Budget Subcommittee, which is a joint committee between the House and the Senate, and is part of the drafting process. And we had a meeting on Thursday, and we were actually looking at some of the changes to funding. We had the presentation from the Legislative Services Agency going over the governor's budget, and Senator Quirmbach from Story County requested that we look at these in inflation-adjusted numbers. And it was a really telling story. Since FY 2000, if you adjust for inflation, so you put everything, apples to apples, right, in 2018 dollars, we've seen $400 million cut from our Board of Regents schools and community colleges. Right, and I understand that we have a limited amount of money, et cetera, but that's a big part. So, and we're because of the way that our current laws are structured, a lot of those cuts are being borne on the backs of our non-tenure faculty, and so I'm incredibly sympathetic. I've had the opportunity to meet with some of these folks and support them, and also like Senator Bolcom, it's something that we're absolutely going to make sure that is on the agenda. And I do think that our Board of Regents are doing the best they can with what they've got, but that should not be an excuse for treating non-tenure faculty this way.
Actually, our Board of Regents could be doing a better job. They can advocate more for the Regent schools, and I wish President Harold showed a little more respect for our teachers. This is born out of the fact of the bill that was passed, the labor bill, the tweaking a few years ago, where how you wanted to organize was determined by people voting, and you had to have 51% of everyone that was eligible in that classification. Now, none of us up here got elected by 51% of every eligible voter in our district. Why we have a goofy thing that says it has to be 51% of everyone within that unit just doesn't match up with the democracy that we're working with in the United States. If we had that tweaked where it was 51% of the people that vote, I believe a lot of our groups at the University of Iowa would effectively organize.
Thank you. And the last question from a co-sponsor will come from the University of Iowa Public Policy Center's Social and Educational Research Program.
Yep, got it. This is a mouthful. Yep, I'm Tessa Herron, and I'm a representative of the University of Iowa Public Policy Center. There's several members of our research team here, and Dr. Brooke is the lead investigator on this. So there's a little bit of a preamble to this question, but it's relevant. So bear with me. The Public Policy Center and the Iowa City School District have been engaged in a research practice partnership over the last 4 years. Each year we survey students to gather information about the academic, disciplinary, social, and emotional environments in schools. This data is used to identify areas of need and disparities across demographic groups, which assists in the monitoring of progress towards equity goals and guides district decision-making. While few districts in the state have the capacity or resources to duplicate this data-driven partnership, the state has issued future-ready guidelines which prioritize the social and emotional competencies of students. Yet, districts are not provided with tools to measure or evaluate these competencies. How will you support districts in the collection and access to comprehensive data to guide decision-making, to measure progress towards state goals?
It's the first time hearing of it, so I'd be very interested in learning more. If you could send me an email, I'm very unfamiliar with the topic, but happy to learn.
One of the first things that needs to be done is to do student surveys throughout the state so that we can identify with the students what are their needs and what needs are not being met. And I think that's a critical part. Obviously, that takes funding, and we do have a survey that is done with our students. I think it's throughout for K-12, and we get that data back. But again, I think there needs to be more on the social emotional. The data includes everything from substance abuse to discrimination or harassment, that kind of thing. But that social emotional is critical in the success of a student. And I think, again, we could put more effort into that. It may be through our AEAs and funding for them that we're able to accomplish that, because they're the ones that help us with gathering a lot of that data as well.
Was it Tessa? What did you find anything that surprised you in the data so far?
In the school district, in the Iowa City School District? Yeah.
You have to use the mic, please. But not for very long, because then she'll say stuff.
Right. I wouldn't say surprised. A lot of the data in the school district is on par with national trends. A lot of disparities by race, income. LGBTQ students are some of the most drastically large disparities as far as negative experiences in school and fewer positive experiences. So the school districts has been doing a lot to focus on, just doing things like building relationships between teachers and students, and making sure that curriculums are inclusive, just making students feel part of the school, and it is very impactful for outcomes, academic, disciplinary, post-secondary. So, yeah, it's something that the school district has been really proactive and transparent about, because it's not always nice to see that data coming out of your schools, but it is necessary to identify.
I would echo Representative Kaufman. If you could share those findings, I'd very much appreciate
Certainly.
it.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Tessa, have you done it with any other school district besides Iowa City?
Nope, just Iowa City so far.
Are you interested in doing anything as kind of a comparison statewide to see how it's
Yes.
further? Okay, thank you. Yeah, and please share those results.
Yep.
And
will
Brady
do.
and JP, you're both here. Can you talk about what's being done in the schools specifically and to address some of that? I think that's important for this audience to hear as well.
Yeah, the partnership that we have is fantastic. It's been ongoing for, I'm not sure how many years now, 4 years, yeah. And the data is, it is very challenging to see. It really opens your eyes to the experience that our students have in our schools, and it's not always comfortable. And I think that's sort of the point, and I think that's why it's important and powerful. And with that data, we've really looked at, in terms of like discipline, engaging in more restorative practices instead of just being, purely punitive with student behaviors that might be in areas, categories like defiance and insubordination, and some of those areas that are a little bit, I think, tougher to really say this, this action gets this consequence. And so we've done a lot of training along those lines. We've really worked hard as a staff to do implicit bias training. We have a partnership with Westwind out of Cedar Rapids, and I think part of that training on implicit bias grew from some of the data that we were seeing. I would say our school board has been very good about supporting our students of color and our LGBTQ students. We have statements that have been made by the school board. We're working on more inclusive curriculum across our area areas. So you look at things like when you purchase materials for your elementary schools in the books, what process do we use to make sure that it's inclusive and so that students really do belong? I think all of our schools now are PBIS schools, so positive behavior intervention system schools, and including our secondary schools. Liberty High School, where I'm at, has been working on that. One of our values that we've been emphasizing is belonging, and we're hoping that through some of the specific training that staff undergo and that we then roll out to students, that we're going to see some changes in the data. Of course, it's really good to have it be longitudinal, and so that's one of the things that we have been looking at. So, I mean, it's been really good. So I would love to see, but it's sort of to the point, when the state does say, we want this data and we want you to meet these goals, there needs to be some sort of funding component in my estimation. This is an important partnership from ICCSD and the UI, but if it's going to broaden out, which I think is very important for social emotional learning of students and us tracking it, then we have to come together, see the work that's been done, and then figure out how we can replicate that. Thanks. I hope that answers the question, yeah.
Okay, at this point, we'd like to open up the microphone to the audience, and let me remind you that you have 1 minute to state your question, and please provide your name and the organization you're representing if you are with an organization. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Schluckebeer. I live in Iowa City. Thank you all for being here. On August 31 of last year, a boy in the Quad Cities took one of his father's 6 firearms to school and attempted to shoot his teacher in the face. The only reason he didn't succeed is because he didn't know enough about firearms to flip the safety off. Although Delta setback, Representative Matt Winchell is now proposing to introduce even more expansive pro-gun legislation than he did in 2016 that would ensure children like this boy would have easy and constitutionally guaranteed access to firearms. Do you support increasing access to firearms, Representative Kaufman? And what will the rest of you do in the minority against a legislative majority that seems hell-bent on putting my children and my wife at risk in their schools?
Well, first and foremost, I categorically and emphatically disagree with the way that you are characterizing the constitutional amendment. I voted for it last year. I'll be voting for it again. And no, I do not believe in any way, shape, or form does that endanger your family. Iowa is one of only 4 states in the United States of America that does not constitutionally recognize your right to bear arms, just like the federal Constitution. The wildly conservative state of Massachusetts has exactly what we're going to do. I do not believe that any criminal or anybody with nefarious intent is going to wake up one day deciding to commit a crime and go, ah, shucks, the legislature changed the code, so I can't do that today. I'd like to focus on making sure that background checks are more expansive and that bad people do not get guns. But interjecting with law-abiding citizens' right to bear arms keeps no one safe, in my opinion.
Mike, are you asking about the Second Amendment language or the constitutional carry?
Representative Winchell, I think, said that they would want to pass the constitutional carry first in order, or the Second Amendment one first in order to get the next round going. But then, of course, with the setback, it extends the timeline for that to occur, from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly won't vote in favor of the Second Amendment language, and I'm really concerned about the permitless carry, which is what I think the constitutional carry would effectively do. I agree, and Representative Kaufman, if you're interested in more legislation on background checks, I would love to figure out a way to work on that. I think that has to be, the minimum starting point on background checks. And I think that there are, if we were in the majority, I think you'd see a lot of changes to the current laws that we currently have. I've already gotten quite a few emails, people talking about things like red flag laws, so making sure that if somebody's experiencing an acute mental health crisis, that those guns can be secured temporarily while that person is dealing with that, taking those kinds of things away. But yeah, I'm really worried about putting Second Amendment language, especially with the strict scrutiny standard, into our Constitution.
I think that's part of the problem that we have with this issue is that they're not trying to put the Second Amendment into the Iowa Constitution. They're trying to put the Second Amendment plus more into the Iowa Constitution. And I would support putting the Second Amendment language hard stop into the Iowa Constitution. But the more is what I have a problem with. And it would negate a lot of the necessity for background checks and other things that we need to keep Iowans safe. And it's, we have laws in place, against a lot of things that people break all the time. And it doesn't mean that we can't do our very best to try to keep Iowans safe from gun violence.
Well, and I don't think people are listening enough, and I disagree a little bit with Senator Walz. And Zach, it's great. You're a great freshman, and I look up to you because you're a foot taller than me. But I look up. I don't like to have the gun discussion and the mental health discussion because that diverts our attention to what the actual issue is, and that's about guns and gun safety. I understand Representative Kaufman's point of view, but you can't turn to a student like both my daughters who say, this scares me. When people like Representative Winchell walks up and says, oh no, it's okay, don't be scared, guess what? Both daughters are still scared. They want a safe place, that it's at school. I'm real sorry that the Secretary of State botched it so the vote doesn't come up sooner. And maybe the best way is for it to be a vote of the people. But I get a little upset hearing people say, don't worry. The students and families like you are worried.
Thank you all.
Mike, before you go, the state capitol allows people to carry in the capitol. We have student groups that come there every single day. They are not allowed to have them in our schools, and yet we have student groups where the school is the capitol on those days. And to me, that's abhorrent. I think at the very least, parents should be notified and told that the capitol is not a protected area in terms of it's a different law regarding what can happen in a school versus the Capitol, and that their children are not protected when they're in the Capitol. So when you sign a permission slip to say that your kid can go to the state Capitol, I think it's important that you know that and that parents are aware that their kids are not protected there. And those buildings, I get, are not secure in terms of anybody can let anybody in a side door. We need to do a better job of protecting that place to make sure that that doesn't happen. We're able to do it at the U.S. Capitol, and they don't allow guns there for anybody except for armed guards. Why in the world would we not have that same criteria at our state capitol, make sure all of the people who work there are protected, and that those doors are protected so that the students who come there to get educated are also protected?
Yeah, just a couple things. The constitutional amendment seems to be kind of the next extreme thing. I mean, I've been in the legislature, this is my 21st session, I've never seen a bill drafted by anybody that's tried to restrict anybody's ability to have their Second Amendment rights. I mean,
there's dozens every year. Dozens.
There may be bills filed. There's never been a bill passed. It's all going the other way. It's all for more liberal rights for gun owners. We passed a bill a couple years ago that had 18 different sections in it.
Yeah.
More access, more openness. And this constitutional amendment likely will have the effect of knocking out of place any ability of the legislature anytime in the future to say, maybe we should have background checks. Background checks might be illegal under this extreme constitutional amendment. Right? So I don't know where we're going with this, right? I mean, we've had people at the Capitol that have said, we want all the same weaponry the military has as civilians. It's like, is that where we're going? That seems like a really extreme spot. Where is the right of us? Where are our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and not to be shot? I mean, I support Second Amendment rights, but where is our right not to be shot and killed by somebody? That seems to be really not part of this discussion, and I'm glad that Secretary Pate screwed up, and we got to start over again. And at some point, probably, voters are going to have a chance to decide on this, because the legislature has to have we got to pass this a couple times, have to have an election, and then Iowans get to decide. And I guess we'll find out.
Hi, Hi, I'm Miriam Timur-Hackert from Coralville, and I have another kind of off-education topic question, but I'm a member of the Iowa State Bar Association as a lawyer and a member of the League of Women Voters, and my understanding is that our merit-based judge selection system is widely envied in other states where they have more issues of the judges at least not appearing to be neutral. And I think our system is very great, and I would like to know, as the only Republican on the board, Bobby Kaufman, are there any issues with our current system, and why would we change it?
When a U.S. president is elected, whether Republican or Democrat, they have the absolute and complete authority to choose the judges they wish to nominate. Many people in the Capitol, some in the House, but many more in the Senate, have to pick. The current system allows that the bar and the attorneys associations pick 50% of the nominees, and then the governor gets to pick 50% of the nominees. Several Republican governors have been upset with the fact that they do not have autonomy over who their nominees get to be. Now, I don't support any extreme side of it. I've heard some things like taking down the number of justices and making a supermajority. I don't support anything extreme, but I'm going to listen to the proposals because can you imagine the outcry, justifiably so for most people in this room, if a very conservative group was allowed to restrict half of President Obama's nominees and that he potentially had to pick from? So I empathize with the fact that a governor might potentially be able to have the same powers that a president has.
Well, Mitch McConnell did. I think the president
nominate.
Nominate. Okay. Appreciate that. We had the Chief Justice give his speech last week on the condition of the judiciary, and before I make that point, we have one of the. Iowa's seen as a model for how we pick judges. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says Iowa has one of the best court systems in the country because we get really good justices and they're fair. So back to the story. So the judges all walk in. There's like the Supreme Court comes in, the appellate court comes in, like 25 judges stream in the robes, and they go up front and they sit and we wait for the speech. And not to be down on white guys, but it's like all these old white guys. And I'm like, bunch of liberals. I'm like, what's the problem we're trying to fix? If the business community likes the court system, you do have Varnum. The Chief Justice Katie wrote the Varnum decision, bringing marriage equality to Iowa, and there's a lot of people still mad about that. We've got too many damn liberal judges. But if you were to see this group of judges come into the room, there's about 4 or 5 women and like 25 guys that are like white and 60 plus. It's not a liberal group. It's a fair group. It's people that are smart.
So I'm going to use a mom line here and say just because it does happen doesn't mean it should. And just because it happens at the federal level with the president doesn't mean we need to or have to or should adopt that here in Iowa. And I think that it's, we hear a lot about the importance of smaller government. And actually what I think we're seeing, what we saw the last 2 years and what we're going to continue to see the next 2 is actually a consolidation of power. People have power now. They want to hold on to it. They're going to consolidate it in the places they think they can hold it. And that's what's happening.
I want to see fair judges. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're Democrat. I want a judge that follows the law. And I feel that the best people, many instances that know those people the best are the people that are actually coming from the bar. I do not want to see the way we pick judges change. Being in law enforcement, I want to go before a judge that is consistent and fair and that follows the law.
There's 2 things that Iowa does in the best category. One of them is how we pick judges currently, and also how we determine political districts. It's bipartisan. No, I'd like to move them around so we have more House Democrats. But that's what we have in Iowa. It's impartial, it's fair, and new isn't always better. I think we need to stay where we are with both of those.
Okay, at this point, because of the time and the length of time it takes to go through each question, I would like to ask one of our 7th grade students who are here, if just one of them would come forward and jump the line, we'd like to hear from you.
paper, scissors.
Thank you.
Pressure's off the two other.
Hi, my name is Alex, and I go to North Central Junior High. I'm here to talk to you about gay rights. I've been attending after-school meetings to meet with other kids my age for 3 months, and we've talked about this topic a lot. Our goal is to get Iowa laws changed to having LGBT members to have the same rights as everyone else. LGBT members are being treated unfairly and needs to change. A test was given to almost all cities over our country to see who was more accepting of the LGBT community. Des Moines got a 97 out of 100, but on the same test, Waterloo only scored a 67 out of 100, and Waterloo had the lowest score in Iowa. A study in Britain showed that over half the suicides in teenagers are caused by bullying. According to ABC News, nearly 30% of students are either bullies or victims of bullying, and over 160,000 kids stay home from school every day for fear of being bullied. In Iowa, suicide is the second leading cause of death in people ages 15 to 34, and the third leading cause of death in people ages 10 to 14. Suicide is the ninth leading cause of death in Iowa. I'm here to ask you to strengthen gay rights and protect them in Iowa for students, foster children, and adults alike. I do believe that if we as a state can work together to enforce homophobia laws, we truly can make this country so much better. And my question is for Zach Walls.
Thanks, Alex. First of all, thank you for being here and for being willing to work with your fellow students. This is something that's very, very near and dear to my own heart. In fact, the very first bill that I'm planning to file as a senator is a bill to ban conversion therapy in our state. It's currently being drafted right now, and I'm hoping to have it ready to get going here in the next week or so. It's something that I'm hoping to work with across the aisle. I think Representative Kaufman and I have talked about this, and it's something that I think we might be able to work on together. And this is something that, you know, the issues that you raise, I know, affect a lot of people, whether you're LGBTQ or from any other group that's ever faced marginalization. Representative Jacoby, I know that this is an issue that is personal to you and your family, and I want to just make sure that you know that there are a lot of folks in Des Moines who are going to fight for you. You know, and I know that when I was growing up, there were a lot of times where I felt like I was alone or like there weren't people who had my back, and that was part of why I decided to run for the Senate. That's why I'm going to be there for you.
If I can just briefly comment, it takes a lot of bravery to get up and ask questions like that. And actually, you can read better than half the people in Des Moines. But I just wanted to echo what Senator Walls said, that I actually consider Nate Monson of Iowa Safe Schools to be a good friend. I'm speaking at the LGBTQ rally on Tuesday and plan on also filing legislation to ban the archaic practice of conversion therapy. So thank you for being here today.
As a mom of a 7th grader at North Central Junior High, I just want to say I'm very proud of you, all 3 of you, for coming here today. Some of us don't want to come here sometimes to this environment. You guys are really great. And I noticed my daughter, my 7th grade daughter, saying things and using words that I would have never known when I was in 7th grade. Things like, I made sure I asked what pronoun they prefer before I use that, you know, when she's talking about other students and things about all kinds of things. So you are doing a wonderful job of educating your peers and also educating all of us old people. So thank you for being here. It's the only time I'm going to refer to myself as old. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Kate Edwards, and I am a vegetable farmer here in the Iowa City area, and I feed 200 families. My customers and their kids often refer to me as Farmer Kate, and so I am here to speak to you as Farmer Kate, but also as someone who works with other farmers. I work with beginning farmers across the state on land access issues, and there's some things going on in the state right now that I wanted to let you know about. So to be brief, I'm just going to read. I'm a beginning farmer, and I'm on my 2nd rental property because I'm a generation removed from farming, and I did not inherit a farm. For many farmers like me, the only way to get started is growing higher value specialty crops, in my case vegetables, on a smaller parcels of land. As many of you know, in Johnson County and several other counties in the state, the benefits of the agricultural zoning exemption are not extended to farms under 40 acres, making the difficult task of buying a farm nearly impossible. Since this is happening throughout the state, my question is, will you support extending the agricultural zoning exemption to small farms, allowing beginning farmers like me to buy land? Thank you.
Unequivocally, I support your position 100% and will do everything I can to advance it.
And Kate, I'm just curious, have you thought about medical marijuana or hemp as another alternative crop? I know that Senator Kinney has been working on that for a number of years, but another avenue, we met with Med Farm, who's doing our medical marijuana here in Iowa, and they had an open house and said they're looking for farmers. And so I want to provide that.
I've got a good thing going with vegetables right now, so I think I'll stick with that for a while.
Just giving you another idea, but yay, women farmers. I'm so glad you're here, and also I think we have some others in the audience as well, and absolutely I support that egg provision and changing the zoning, so thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I think, I don't know that this issue has gotten a whole lot of publicity, so I'm glad you came to kind of raise the attention for it, and I would encourage you to keep honest about it.
Thank you.
This is one of the things that we're going to have to continue to do to get more farmers within our community. It is so cost prohibitive to go out and try to farm, as you say, the conventional way. To me, this is a great opportunity to get our young people involved in making a living. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen Fisher from rural Solon, and I'm representing Cafe Clean Air for Everyone, a nonprofit tobacco prevention organization. My question is for Bobby Kaufman. So I've sent you some emails this week. Cafe is supporting increasing the tobacco tax, or actually the nicotine tax, so it would include electronic cigarettes and all products that include nicotine. But we want to increase that tax to the equivalent of $1.50 a pack, because raising the price of tobacco products is the best way to get people to not begin smoking or to quit. So we're working on getting a bill introduced in the House, and I'm just wondering if you would support or co-sponsor that bill.
Well, thanks for being here, Eileen. I wasn't ignoring your emails, and I do have your 2 text messages as well. When I became state government chair, I handed my cell phone number up because it's easier to access me that way. I currently have 70 that I haven't read yet. I did see yours, though. The reason I haven't responded yet is I don't like to make a promise I can't follow through with, and I've been visiting with various stakeholders in both the House and the Senate to see what prospective tax bills would look like. You've got the movement to not do anything this year because we got the tax credit review this time. You've got a 3/8 cent I will that possibly has momentum, and there are so many different moving parts, but I just want you to know that I am including your request in all of my conversations. As to whether I'll specifically co-sponsor, I don't have a problem doing that, but putting my name on it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't go anywhere. And I just want you to know that I am trying to do my best to see if there's a pathway for that to actually happen, but yes, I'd be happy to co-sponsor it.
I personally think putting your name on it would make it go somewhere.
I appreciate your faith in me.
Eileen, before we lose you, Eileen, are vaping products currently taxed at all in the state of Iowa beyond the traditional sales tax?
No.
No.
And you do not need a license to sell vaping products.
Okay.
Even the ones with nicotine in them?
No. Okay. So that's why we really need to do something, and we need to include all vapor products and the components in a tobacco tax, and also a license to sell them.
Would you be willing to share with the rest of us what you've been sharing with Representative Kaufman? I've seen several. It was funny. We had this conversation yesterday at the ICCSD forum, and I realized that I don't know what all the kids are doing these days, and I felt a little old, Representative Nielsen. So, if you'd be willing to share with us, whether it's the latest on our current laws here in the state as they pertain to vaping, and also the latest on health effects of vaping, I would really appreciate the opportunity to review those.
I'll provide you with that information, and but I forgot that you were new. So $1.50 tobacco tax would keep young people from starting to use nicotine products, and it would help people quit. That's been shown that it's the most effective way. A $1.50 increase in the tobacco tax would raise $101 million. And the bill that we had last year specified that we wanted $9 million of that to go towards tobacco prevention programs and the rest of it to go towards health. So I believe last year the bill wanted to use that money for mental health because there's a need. Yep. There's bipartisan support on doing something for mental health. They need a revenue for that. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of support for that if we can get the bill introduced and out of committee.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, vaping is an epidemic right now. The National Institute on Drug Abuse just recently reported an increase of more than 10% usage among 12th graders. It's the single largest year-over-year increase since we began collecting information by an enormous amount. These are the public education on these vaping products we need to do a much better job. These are nicotine products. 12th grade brains are not fully developed. These are hazardous. These are not aids to quit smoking. These vaping products are dangerous, and we need to tax them and regulate them like tobacco. Having been at City High a few weeks ago and talking to students, they're all vaping. They're all vaping. It's like 1 out of every 5 12th graders is vaping, and it is an enormous problem that, and on tobacco, the same survey, there's been no increase in tobacco. It's basically been flat in terms of kids smoking cigarettes. We've done a good job of reducing that, and it's panned out, but a 10% increase in vaping is just an enormous thing, and we are missing the picture here by not being aggressive on this, because in another few years, we are going to have millions more kids addicted to nicotine.
There are
adults.
Health effects from vaping, and that we know about, and ones that we don't know about. We won't know for probably 20 years. But tobacco, again, we know that the effects of tobacco, so we need to increase the price on all products, and also add electronic cigarette vaping to their secondhand smoke law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Travis Weipert, Johnson County Auditor. One of the first things I want to talk about is SAFE. Fully support it, being the husband of a teacher, but I think one of the bills out there, attending the meeting yesterday with the superintendents, is whether or not to have a sunset out there for the voters on if they extend it. One of my concerns, if you put a sunset on it, the election costs now for school districts, thanks to the combining of city and schools, has increased tremendously, not because we raised our prices, because we have to have more voting sites open, and I now have new school districts that I have to run voting sites for where I did not in the past, such as College Community and West Branch. So that also leads me to now the combining city school elections. One of the unintended consequences is what it's going to cost to put those on now. A lot of that burden has been shifted to the school districts. I sent Superintendent Murley a note the other day that the formula we have, the taxpayers in the Iowa City School District are going to see their election costs go up almost $9,000. So that's something that I think needs to be looked at. Same way when it comes to publications. Now, do I have to publish in the newspapers for West Branch here in Johnson County, even though it's happening in Cedar, which would double the cost? And obviously the newspapers here, the Press Citizen, is a lot costlier than what they would publish in Cedar County. The other thing is
Travis, if I may, how does that work for school districts that cross county lines?
So that's now the thing. So if a school district crossed county lines, before it was the control county, now it's the county line. So if any part part of the district comes into Johnson County, I have to have a site for those voters. So like with Mount Vernon, I believe I have 6 or 8 voters because the school district comes into Johnson County. I now have to print ballots and run the election for those few people, which would mean that West Branch is now going to get a pretty substantial bill from Johnson County. So that was one of the unintended consequences that was not looked at when this was rolled out. And in regards to the 29 ballots and House District 55, obviously the law needs to be changed. Unfortunately, when I've talked to the Secretary of State's office, I cannot move, or I don't feel I should move to going to printing the barcode here in Johnson County and spending the money at this time because I have no idea what the legislature is going to do. I vehemently oppose going to a drop dead date and time. I think that will disenfranchise the most voters. But unfortunately, it appears the Secretary of State's office is providing no leadership on this. And again, auditors are just dangling in the wind, waiting to see how we're going to proceed on this also. Same way at the schools. Are we supposed to publish in 2 counties? I mean, it's pretty much every auditor for yourself right now. So.
Thank you. And Travis, to the point on the 29 ballots, within that House District 55, 3 different ways they counted those ballots, depending on the auditor in that county. And tells you why there's a problem and why there's a lack of equity statewide when that occurs. And so that's, your point's well taken, and there should be a change to the law. I'm looking to Representative Kaufman to co-sponsor legislation to fix this so it doesn't happen again, and that we've got continuity and consistency across the state. Shouldn't be that a county auditor has the ability to count or not count those ballots, and in some counties they did, and some counties they didn't.
I totally agree with that. I also think that it needs to be changed at the state level how these contests are handled. When I say state level, in the legislature, because I knew from the get-go where this was going. Unfortunately, Bobby Kaufman, I'm not picking on you, but I told the media right away, this is the process. The Republicans are in the majority. You know, I hate to use the term kangaroo court, but that's kind of what it amounted to. And last but not least, I would like to see the governor immediately sign executive order allowing felons to vote. Her predecessor was quick to sign an executive order to prohibit it. She could easily do that the second she walked out of the State House. So Representative Kaufman, something with your party I would like to see you push, and then I would be happy to work on legislation moving forward for a constitutional amendment. So
got quite the to-do list from today. Travis, you're the 3rd or 4th person to bring up Cedar County today. Is that by accident or design, or no? I'm just kidding.
That's just because West Branch is a big concern cost-wise, knowing how many students they said they're losing and other funding. So that's why.
I understand. I was just giving you grief. I support the safe extension without strings. I don't want anybody meddling with it. The only meddling I'd like to see is if school districts could use it for other things like transportation. But as far as I'm concerned, it should be extended without any strings attached. I have a question for you real quick. My auditor over in Cedar County brought me into a auditor statewide email loop where it seemed like all 99 of you were in staunch opposition to one of the Secretary of State's billing changes. Does that ring any sort of a bell where you would have to change your billing practices? And anyway, I don't mean to take up our time here. I'll email you, but I just wanted you to know that she said that every auditor across the state has been talking about this. And
that might be the county election. The election.
That would be the election part, because every county, it's on us to come up with our own formula. So how I bill Johnson County and West Branch may not be how Cedar County charges the other part of the West Branch school
district. And so you want to see that go away?
Well, not go away, but there would be some nice guidance to figure, because now you're going to probably have 99 different formulas.
I will not be following the Secretary of State's recommendations. I'll be following your guys' recommendations.
And that's the other thing I'd be happy to talk about is technical bill at some point. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Robin Fields, and I am a teacher at the Iowa City Community School District, and I'm also the vice president for the Iowa City Education Association. But the reason I'm up here asking a question, it's a little bit selfish, and maybe it's also on behalf of 36 of my colleagues because we're taking early retirement this year. And that being said, Representative Kaufman, I'd like to speak to you, but I'd also like to speak to the rest of you as well. I know that there's been a lot of publicity about IPERS and if it's safe or if it's going to be touched by the legislature. And you have confirmed several different times in several different media outlets that it will not be touched. but I was also there when you said that Chapter 20 was going to be tweaked. And I know it's a contentious issue for you, and I know you're getting ready to address my concern. And I please understand, I am speaking with the best interest here. But what concerns me is, in the media in the last couple of days, there's also been some name calling, like calling the Iowa State Education Association liars and that type of thing. But I would like, not just you, Mr. Representative Kaufman, but the rest of the legislators too, to address this. How confident are you that you can protect IPERS in light of Senate File 45? And I understand that Governor Reynolds came out before the election and she wrote letters to the editor. Speaker of the House, Linda Uppmeyer, did the same thing. But what I'd like to know is, on behalf of all of you, how confident are you that you can stick to your word of not touching IPERS? Thank you.
I never used the word tweak. 2 people used it 2 years ago, and that is suddenly the omnipotence for everybody that ever referenced it. When I sat here, I hadn't yet seen the final version of the bill. So that tweak isn't something you get to assign to me to have said because I didn't. Number 2, I listen to you. If you can let me respond, please. Number 2, I resoundingly reject, with all due respect, Representative Masher and you, this connecting of Chapter 21, or excuse me, of that, and then of IPERS. In 2011, the legislature, Republican legislature, passed a collective bargaining reform bill that was stronger than the one that was passed in 2017. In 2014, we did actually pass a tweak to collective bargaining. There is a long history of the Republican House passing collective bargaining reform. Shouldn't have been a big shocker. There has never been a Republican-led IPERS bill go anywhere. I keep hearing Senate Bill 45. For goodness sakes, it was a goofy bill that was brought up 2 years ago that never got a subcommittee. Ever. Republicans have never passed an IPERS bill. The last time IPERS was changed was in 2010 when Democrats were in control. So those two things are not connected. I know you want them to be, and I know you believe them to be, but the Republicans have a history of changing collective bargaining, voting on it, and zero history of IPERS. Now, I'm not frustrated with you. I'm frustrated with the fact that groups continue to put out the fact that I am the absolute sole gatekeeper, period. No IPERS bill. I've been given complete assurances by my speaker. No IPERS bill will go anywhere but state government. That's where they've always gone. That there's 149 other people. I am the sole reason that IPERS legislation is going nowhere. There's not anybody else. I'm not talking about people up here. Not one word in the IPERS language is going to be changed, and I am sole complete charge of that. And I'm telling you right now for the 3rd time publicly, absolutely and unequivocally not.
I'm hopeful. I'm sorry. Did you?
No,
want to
you go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm hopeful that, as Representative Kaufman says, he's not going to allow that to come through the House, and no bill can become law without going through the House. That is 100% true. What we saw last year with the fetal heartbeat bill was that the Senate held our budgets hostage until the House took that bill up. So I'm hopeful that that doesn't happen again and that we won't see anything, but I think we need to stay vigilant. I'm very happy that Representative Kaufman is being so outspoken, and I appreciate that from him. I wish that he was the one and only person that had any control over that, but I think that there's a lot of other people that could have a say on this, and I think you're right to be vigilant and keep asking the question.
Robin, part of this comes about as a result of the governor during the election had made comments about, I am not intending to change IPERS for current members. However, I am looking at a different system for new members. So that was said during the election, and that is the leader of their party. That's the leader of their party. Now, she's backed off of that since, but you can see why people are concerned. So to say that Republicans aren't interested in that and they haven't, the Senate brings in the Reason Foundation every summer to review our public pensions. And they have a very concerted effort nationwide to gut public pension systems. We know that.
Right.
So to think that there's no reason that anybody should be worried, nothing to see here, is not true. And that's why we want ISEA, we want AFSCME, we want all of those groups to be vigilant and to hold people to their word. Because there are others out there who do not hold Representative Kaufman's view and would change it tomorrow if they could, because they have a very different agenda. Right. So let's be honest about that and be real about it, because that's where the discomfort comes from.
Right. Representative Kaufman, I apologize if I caused you any frustration, but I just want you to understand that when Chapter 20 was gutted, and I've been at several legislative forums, and so in my memory, maybe you didn't use the word tweak, but there was some kind of synonym with that. But anyway, I would just ask that the good faith that seems to be extended from one side of the one party to the other, with Senator Bolkin mentioning how Governor Reynolds is making steps to try to be a little bit more cohesive. I would just ask that with such a huge pressing issue, that you use the same kind of, relationship, or the same kind of understanding and empathy that is being shown that I've seen here today. I mean, more so than I have any other year. So I wasn't trying to be contentious, or wasn't trying to create any frustration from you. I would just ask that in the future, when you reference and talk about IPERS, I don't think calling the ISEA liars, or any of those other organizations liars, when they say that there's this conversation going on. I really appreciate your defense of IPERS. I hope it continues, and I just wanted to speak about that in the public, so I thank you for that.
Robin, thanks for your years of service to the district and the students of Iowa City. We need to give her a round of applause. Thank you.
We're not that bad. Don't be nervous. We'll hold him back.
Most of us aren't that
We'll
bad.
hold him back.
My name is Wolf Fellis. I'm transgender and pansexual.
Could you move your microphone down towards your mouth so everybody needs to hear you? Thank you.
Good job.
I'm Wolf Fellis. I'm transgender and pansexual, and I go to North Central Junior High as a 7th grader. Some schools allow transgender kids to go to their preferred bathroom, but like me, many transgender kids are afraid to go into the bathroom of the gender they weren't born as because of transphobic people. Having gender-neutral bathrooms would make a lot of trans kids feel much better about themselves. Misgendering and all the friendly teasing is what causes transgender kids to be depressed, and it's what causes them to feel like they aren't good enough and they aren't worthy, but they are. They don't know it, though, and if they won't know it if no one does anything about kids who hurt trans kids and intentionally and unintentionally hurt like anyone from, yeah. A lot of people think the LGBTQ community is crazy or they're confused, but we're not. And people say because gay people have a higher suicide rate that we must have something wrong with us. We don't. We don't have anything wrong with us. We have a higher suicide rate because people like them bring us to it. They keep pushing until we can't take it anymore, and we think death would be better than living in this world with these people. Everyone thinks that we're just weird kids sitting off in the sidelines, but they don't really realize that we are sitting there because we're afraid to go up and talk to them. They think they physically and mentally bully us. We are just kids, but they can't see that. I'm here to ask if you could give access to the bathrooms that they prefer. Yeah.
Wolf, do you know if that's been done in Iowa City? Do they have identified restrooms for transgendered students?
I don't think so.
Okay. I know the University of Iowa actually has a map of all the transgendered restrooms on campus. And it seems to me that the school district should do they should be doing that as well, and to provide that safety for you. It is a safety issue. And obviously, we all care about our students and want to make sure you're safe in our schools. So I really appreciate you bringing that before us. We can have further conversations with the school district about that, but you should feel safe in the school where you're learning, and we need to make sure that that happens. Thanks.
Very well done. And I'd like to ask, could you provide each one of us with a copy of your statement?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Nice job.
Very well done.
Great work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Victoria, and I am here on the grounds of the LGBTQ community's reduced rights to donating blood due to AIDS. So AIDS originated in the gay community, and so there's a ban that has been placed since 1985 that says, hey, since they don't practically go as, hey, a male likes a male, they can't due to AIDS. Wait. Yeah. Okay, so straight men have the possibility to get AIDS because AIDS can come from anything, being exposed to blood. And so Iowa is basically supporting the discrimination rights because they're saying, since you are not as normal as all the other people in our community, you are going to get these certain rights taken away. And so my question to all of you is to take a look at the rights and at least try to help the people who are trying to donate but can't due to all the homophobic people and all the sayings, hey, you are not straight, you can't donate blood, you can't help save people's lives because you are not like anyone else. Like, they can't express themselves and can't help anybody due to all these people. And that's just...
Thank you.
Victoria, thank you for sharing. It sounds like you're referring to the FDA's ban on men who have sex with men's ability to donate blood, and that is something that is at more, I think, at the federal level, if I'm not mistaken, rather than at the state level. I'm not sure if there are steps that the state of Iowa can take to try and fix that inequity that exists. I think especially today with the fact that you have ability to test for HIV/AIDS much more rapidly than was the case in the past. I think this law was put into place mostly to try and protect the blood supply, which is really important, and we got to make sure that when folks are donating blood that we can move it through the system as quickly as we can. I also think our understanding of HIV/AIDS has changed dramatically since the 1980s, and so if there are opportunities for the state of Iowa to modernize that language, it's definitely something that I would want to take a very serious look at. There are lots of other issues that are affecting blood centers right now, including the fact that last year's, this is way more detailed than you want, but the last year's tax bill had some changes to basically how blood centers are taxed, and so that's, I think, kind of the most pressing concern for the blood centers right now. But I think that inequity is absolutely something that has to be looked at going forward. Thanks.
Victoria, thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here.
Nice job.
Great work.
Yeah.
Nice work, Miss Megan.
Thank you. My name is Phil Hemingway. I'm a school board director here in Iowa City, and I just want to say that we're blessed to be in Iowa City and live here in Iowa City and be Iowans. Our ability to partner with the University of Iowa on surveys, which we receive, and you'll definitely get copies of it because there's a wealth of information in it. It's a tremendous benefit that any other community in the state would be jealous to have the opportunities that we have, and I feel the university is a tremendous partner, and there's many opportunities to do more. I sent a guest opinion in the Press Citizen. It was on 2 weeks ago. It was in the Des Moines Register last week and the Gazette last week as well. Thank you for 30 seconds more. And I did get a response from Zach Wells on it, and it talks about the flexibility with the TLC funding we received from the state and giving us that flexibility. We wouldn't be in a position to incentivize a veteran teacher to retire to help us save money. That would have the net effect of increasing school funding by 4.5%. And it's not a shell game. It gives local control to local boards to decide how best to use that money. Some may choose not to change a thing and keep it the way it is. In our school district, we have 80 languages spoken in our schools. I don't believe there's 80 people in this room. So if you can imagine everyone in here speaking a different language and trying to educate everyone else about something, that's the challenges we're facing. So giving us that flexibility with that funding will meet the goals of what you're all talking about, increasing state aid and helping us do the best with the money that we have. ELL challenges, career and technical education, which we need, I've got 100 other questions I'd like to pose to you, but
And your question today is?
Yes, and I'm summing it up that I would like them to comment on giving local school boards the flexibility with that TLC funding. Thank you.
We did provide flexibility in some of the other funding categoricals last year, and those were funding streams that were vetted very well by our Teachers Association, school boards, School Administrators of Iowa, our School Board Association. All of those groups supported that flexibility with our dropout prevention and at-risk monies. There were a number of other issues there, but I am not interested at all in giving flexibility to teacher quality. We fought too hard to get mentors for our teachers in Iowa so that they would stay in the classroom. And that is extremely valuable in terms of the new teachers who need that support and help. And those programs are, I don't know if ISEA wants to speak to that or any of the other education groups, but I don't hear anybody else asking us to do that. And so I look to our education community and those who are closest to it to determine policy. And I have not heard anybody else in those communities asking us to do that. They recognize the value of teacher quality and they want it to continue as is.
Yeah, I'm just, we talked about this a little bit when at the school down Hills, I think.
PTO, parent toward.
Down when we were down Hills. I mean, I thought a couple years ago when we had no money for allowable growth or SSA that, geez, we've put $150 million in this. Maybe we should fund the basics, right? And can we really afford this? And got a lot of pushback from members that put it in place. The most educated educators in our caucus said, no, we don't do that. We need to stay on this path. So I don't know. I guess I tend to agree with Representative Masher on this. If there are more voices that think we need more flexibility, I'm open to hearing them.
We have a few more minutes if there are other questions.
I guess on that issue, Mary, thanks for the opportunity. I think one of the things that happens with chronic underfunding is that you start to pit groups against each other within the same system, and I feel like that's one of the things that's happening here. I asked a question about how you retain, recruit and retain the very best and the brightest to be teachers, and this is one of the programs that I see as doing that. We want our teachers to have the opportunity to serve in leadership roles and to mentor their other teachers and to serve as coaches for their other teachers, and and ideally then to learn from that experience and then go back into the teaching in the classroom, and then new people can emerge. And we're 4 or 5 years into that. We're looking to see to make sure that that's happening so we can improve student achievement and so we can I think retain the very best people. I think when you are a public school teacher, that's one of the things that you want. I mean, the classroom is an amazing place, it is, but you also want the opportunity to have some leadership training and for us, this is one of the things that does that, and so we just have not. I understand. I think one of the challenges, I feel like we wouldn't have this conversation if we were fully funded for the last 7 or 8 years. I don't think you would have that. So to me, it's sort of a function of that, and I understand Director Hemingway's perspective on it, and understand our budget concerns, and do appreciate that. But I'm not sure. I think that's more of the conversation in my mind, and I see it as something that is valuable.
Thank you.
Phil, I just want to, just briefly, Phil, I want to say thanks for the question. And when you shared the fact about 80 different languages being spoken in our classrooms, I went to Weber Elementary, and I had the chance to speak with a member of the PTO a couple months ago, and she informed me that a majority of your K-6 students at Weber speak a language other than English at home, and I just found that almost impossible to wrap my mind around. So I do think it is important that we're helping students, families.
I believe there's someone behind you. She was next.
I just wanted to add one other fact, that 84 cents out of every dollar we spend in the district is on personnel. Mm-hmm. We also are in the district that has the highest paid teachers in the state.
Yeah.
And they're our best resource too. Yeah.
We are. And I meant that not as an insult, as that we value education and we need flexibility. To continue.
continue.
Hi, my name is Jessica Roman. I live in North Liberty. I'm an AEA employee, but I'm not K-12. I work on the very, very beginning end of education, and that is kids birth to 3 with disabilities and developmental delays. My role is to provide home intervention services to coach parents in how to best facilitate their child's development. I work with a massive team of occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech pathologists, I mean, I can't even begin to describe everybody I work with. So if anybody's ever confused about what AEA does, please come to work with me and I'll introduce you to a whole bunch of folks and you can see. I'm also the parent of a teenager, so I am at a really unique crossroads right now where I'm working with very young children and also parenting a teen. And part of what I'm seeing is this intersection of education in terms of what it means for our very, very young children and the effect that Medicaid is having on that education for our very, very young children. It's early in the session. I have not seen any discussion around Medicaid and some of the effects that the privatization continues to have. I do have a lot of families who are seeing some pretty traumatic fallout from the privatization. Most recently, Representative Nielsen, I messaged you about a family that lives in North Liberty whose son has a terminal diagnosis. We're working with them to best meet his needs as we can, but they received a letter saying their Medicaid waiver would be terminated as of February 1st because they're over income. This is a mistake because those income limits don't apply to that waiver when your child has a terminal diagnosis. Out of your control, the mom is also a USDA employee who's been furloughed for the last 36 days. So this is one of many, many stories that I have. Please know that this continues to be a real problem for families. Services are being denied. Wheelchairs are being denied because children are outliving their life expectancy. It's applying to foster kids. It's applying to kids who have private insurance. It's applying to kids whose parents have no private insurance. It continues to be a real concern for Iowa families. I don't know that this is really so much of a question as a plea to you to please keep this on the forefront of your to-do list. If you want to meet families, if you want to know their stories, I am happy to introduce you to them. They would like to be here themselves, but traveling in sub-zero temperatures with kids who are ventilator dependent or wheelchair dependent, or because one parent has to stay home while the other parent works because nursing's not available, especially in rural areas. I cover 8 rural school districts, which is a huge amount of territory, and I have at least one kid in every single one of your districts. So please, like I said, my plea is for them to keep this on the forefront of discussions and not let it just don't let it become our new normal here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I did respond to you, didn't I? Sometimes I just do it in my head, but I think
you said you were going to look into it, and I realize when it's a case by case basis, there's only so much that you can do, but on a systemic level, phones are not being answered, emails are not being returned, letters are not being returned. Huge mistakes are being made in the way that benefits are being allocated or denied. And we can say, well, we'll work on it. But when it's your child who has lost the ability to walk, talk, communicate, eat in the last 2 months, and you're waiting on that wheelchair that allows you to still take them out in the community and be a normal family, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I just want to thank you for being their voice because it is hard to voice that when you're dealing with all of the problems and issues that you just talked about on top of being a furloughed employee, trying to get food on the table, you've got to prioritize the things that you have to deal with, and it's really, really unfortunate that the state has put that family in that kind of situation. I am looking into it, and I hope to get back with you next week on something that we can do for them.
She works with my wife.
Okay.
My wife works right beside her. This is something that actually was just brought into my attention in the last week, maybe. It's something that we are also, I've got staff looking into if there's anything we can do. I know it's a matter of $200.
Yeah, $200. 200, yeah. And like I said, they're not the only one. That's my most recent and kind of most pressing because of his diagnosis. Their time with their son is short. And so, one person told the mom to be the squeaky wheel. And her response was, I'm supposed to be spending time with my son, not spending time being the squeaky wheel to get what we need on the phone. So, and like I said, this is just one of, 40 families I work with at the moment who have had either something denied that shouldn't have been or told that they were over income when the income limit shouldn't pertain. And so it's a continuous battle for families. And filling out those appeal forms, especially, there are foster parents who have stacks of appeal forms on their dining room table based on the date that they're due, trying to get this done for the kids that they're fostering. And so it's like, it continues to be a problem. I could talk for a long time, but
we are at this point, but let's let anyone that would like to address this speak.
Well, just in big picture on Medicaid. So we had an election. The governor won. The governor is of a mind to not change anything about Medicaid privatization in the next 6 months. We're going to have a new provider come in, and we're going to churn 200,000 Iowans to that new provider. So we're going to go from 2 to 3 MCOs. The thing we're working on this session, I hope we can get bipartisan support, is a third-party independent review of service denials and payment denials. Right now, if you are a provider or a consumer of Medicaid services, and the MCOs deny you appeal to the MCO. Doesn't make much sense, right? No, you don't get that. Well, you sure? No, you don't get that. So we need a third-party independent panel to review for both members and for providers, and I hope we can get some support in a bipartisan way to do that. I think that's this is here. It's not going away. There are still problems, but we need to have an independent opportunity for citizens to be heard.
Thank you.
And on top of that, I know that House Democrats are going to be offering a bill soon to kind of address the most vulnerable Iowans who have the most severe cases that Medicaid cover. Try to get them off of this managed care and back into a state-run and fee-for-services type program. I really hope that we can get some bipartisan support for that as well. We need to take care of these families, our most vulnerable Iowans, and we're not doing it right now. And for the governor to flat out say that, Medicaid's here to stay, it's working, we're going to stay the course, it's all, just paint this rosy, pretty picture. It's very disingenuous, and it's horrible to do that to the families that you work with. And I'm going to try not to get real worked up like Representative Kaufman does, but it is really bad, and it's really hard to fix that when that's what you're hearing from the leader of your state. So we're working on it.
Representative Kaufman, I'm just curious, and not to put this on you, but are there any efforts to rein in some of the MCOs and the decisions that have been made that impact these families and kids?
Well, I think we had a good start, not a fix, but a good start last year. The new contracts that were signed included the language that every single one of us voted for up here. But I would be active in looking for solutions to hold them more accountable. I have noticed a lowering of requests that I have had, but one is too many. So I'm not saying that to say that everybody that still has problems is not worthwhile. One problem is too many, just so I'm crystal clear. But I would like to see, I was actually an early supporter verbally, we haven't had a chance to vote on anything yet, of taking the highest needs folks off of that system and being put into a state-run system. There's no money to be saved off of somebody that's being kept alive by technology. And so I would definitely support that and any further accounting. And I don't think any group, I say this for Republican issues, Democrat issues, whatever, any group or entity that's afraid of a third-party audit of just open transparency, as long as that third-party audit is also above board, probably takes up or probably starts more questions than it does answer. And so I would definitely support that. I think if the MCOs have improvements that they've been making, then they should show them to us.
To wind up this very, very energetic session. Let me thank those of you who I asked the questions and those of you who are providing our answers. Thanks also to our co-sponsors, the Iowa City Community School District, the Iowa City Education Association, the American Association of University Professors, and the University of Iowa Public Policy Center's Social and Education Research Program, and to the local television staff for filming this event and live streaming it on the League's Facebook page. Rebroadcast of this forum will be run on Iowa City Channel 4, Coral Vision, and North Liberty TV. See their respective websites for programming. We also appreciate the use of City Hall this morning. Our next forum, whose topic is environmental issues, certainly no conflicts there, I'm sure, will be February 23rd, from 9:30 to 11:30 at the Coralville Public Library. Please join us and stay warm, everybody. Thank you for being here.